The Mythcache presents The Capital That Went Silent. A royal capital burned after its kings were already gone. Its archives survived. Its final explanation did not. No final tablet explains the exit. No clear battle scene solves it. This was Hattusha, heart of the Hittite Empire, a power strong enough to challenge Egypt. But the strangest clue is not the fire. It is what happened before the fire. If the city was attacked, why does it look as if people had already chosen what to carry away? To understand the mystery, first look at what Hattusha was built to be. The ruins sit near modern Bogazkoy, high on the Anatolian plateau, far from the sea. In the 2nd millennium BC, this became the capital of the Hittite Empire. This was not a small hill town. It was a royal command center spread across stone ridges. From the road, the message was simple. This place was not meant to be surprised, rushed, or easily broken. Its kings wrote to Egypt, fought for Syria, and ruled through roads, temples, armies, grain, and treaties. But power on paper can still crack. Even the approach was designed to intimidate. The walls climbed with the hills and turned the landscape into warning. At the Lion Gate and the Royal Gate, power was carved into stone before a visitor reached the palace. Above the city stood Yerkapi, a massive artificial rampart with a dark passage running under it. Nearby, Yazilikaya turned living rock into a sacred procession of gods, goddesses, and royal ritual. Hattusha was fortress, temple, archive, and stage. Every stone said this state expected to last. The city worked like a machine of belief and control, with sacred spaces above, official spaces inside, and guarded approaches below. Now watch the clue change. The strongest evidence is not only the walls, it is the records. Thousands of clay tablets preserved laws, rituals, letters, treaties, myths, supplies, military affairs, and daily administration. The tablets matter because they make Hattusha feel less like a legend and more like an operating government. This was a capital that wrote things down. It organized power through messages, seals, storage, and memory. That is why its ending feels so unnatural. If any city should have explained itself, it was Hattusha. Hold on to that missing final order. In a few minutes, it becomes the center of the whole story. Yet near the end of the Bronze Age, the world around the capital began to shake. The danger was not one simple enemy at the gate. It was pressure arriving from many directions at once. The collapse was not one clean scene. It was a system losing its grip. Around 1200 BC, palaces across the eastern Mediterranean weakened, trade routes broke, and old powers became fragile. This was not one country falling in isolation. It was a connected Bronze Age world losing pieces of its network. The Hittite Empire was part of that wider storm. But Hattusha has its own stranger puzzle. Archaeologists found signs of burning in important places, including the royal acropolis, temples, and fortifications. Here is the midpoint twist. A city burns, so we imagine an army breaking through the gate. But the deeper clue is quieter. Many portable valuables and important records seem to have been removed before the destruction. That changes everything. The fire may be the loud part. The real mystery may be the emptying before it. That does not prove every street was empty. It suggests the capital may have been hollowed out before the final fire. The last known king connected to this ending is Suppiluliuma II. After him, the central written voice fades. The tablets do not give us a final royal announcement. They do not tell us where the king went. So the question changes. Not only who burned Hattusha, but why the capital went quiet first. Now another pressure enters the story: climate. A nature study found evidence for severe dry years around 1198 to 1196 BC. But drought is not the final answer. It is the next trap in the case. The study used tree rings and isotope evidence from central Anatolia to read stress in ancient wood. Drought does not automatically destroy an empire, but it can attack the thing every palace needs: grain. Texts from the 13th century mention grain shortages or famine in Hittite lands, but the evidence must be handled carefully. The careful version is this: drought may have made an already stressed system harder to hold together. So drought is not the villain by itself. It is one hand pushing on a structure already carrying too much weight. Other pressures were possible too: rebellion, disrupted trade, military threats, migrations, and political breakdown. The Kaska peoples from the north have been suggested as one possible force behind the final burning, and that is why the simple invasion story does not fully work. Attacking an emptied capital is different from defeating a living one. Now picture the last days carefully, not as fact, but as the shape of the evidence. Maybe officials left in stages, maybe the court moved, maybe enemies arrived after the heart was gone. Administrators choose tablets, priests remove sacred vessels, families follow roads out through gates meant to impress enemies. The records do not prove that exact scene. They do support the larger problem. Hattusha was not simply smashed at its height. Then came the fire, and the evidence became even stranger. Walls, temples, and official spaces were damaged. The old imperial capital never returned to its role. What survived was not the empire itself. It was the paperwork the destruction helped preserve. This is the next turn. Fire can erase a palace, but clay can survive it. Clay tablets baked harder in heat, leaving later scholars pieces of a vanished government. Those pieces rebuilt a world: laws, rituals, diplomacy, supplies, prayers, and the daily machinery of rule. The tablets let us hear the empire working, but not the one sentence that would close the case. But the one record we want most is still missing. No tablet says, "This is why we left." That is why Hattusha is more than a ruin. It is a warning about systems that look permanent. That is the frightening part. Great systems do not always fail with one visible blow. A capital can have walls, archives, gods, treaties, and armies, and still depend on harvests, roads, trust, and time. When those supports failed, or seemed about to fail, the royal city may have gone silent before anyone lit the fire. So the mystery is not just who burned Hattusha. It is why the heart of the empire was already quiet. A city can be conquered after it has already lost the conditions that made it worth defending. That is the shadow over Hattusha. If one final tablet is still under the ruins, what do you think it would say?